This is our first meeting of 2018. It's now more than 1.5 years since the vote, and Brexit continues to dominate our lives.
The man who runs the Foreign Office is the Chief Civil Servant, Sir Simon MacDonald.
Barbara, Tom and John.
Every 6 months, he gathers selected top ambassadors from around the world for an uninhibited discussion.
Even though I detect quite a lot of interest, certainly in parts of the press and parts of the Labour Party, in trying to stop Brexit, my judgment is this is a failing cause. There will be dramas, but I think the course is set, and on the 29th of March 2019 we will leave the European Union.
China is thinking about Brexit, so for all you're ruling out a second referendum, there was a piece in one of the Chinese papers today which discussed exactly that. Was Britain going to have a second referendum? So the Brexit debate is very, very live in China, and the world has changed around us because the China-US relationship has, of course, become much more prominent.
If you can't make a reality of global Britain in a place like Pakistan, where can you make it? Brexit had almost zero impacts on the relationship. A little bit of querying why would a friend want to do this to itself, a little bit of worrying about losing a friend in the EU, some personal worrying about Nawaz Sharif losing his mate David Cameron, then realising actually he liked Theresa May, so that's okay. But actually, frankly, the extent to which Brexit impacts upon the relationship with Pakistan is entirely down to us, I suppose, and how we use that.
VJ, tell us about Brazil.
So Brazilian politics is as weird and as corrupt as the press make out. So they don't understand Brexit. They think it's an opportunity, and they think it's an opportunity for trade. Because they think, bluntly, that we'll be so desperate for a trade deal, we'll sign up to a trade deal on their terms, which means agricultural liberalisation, it means chicken, pork and beef. Because we will be doing this work by ourselves, it's going to be tougher. Clearly, the fiscal backdrop is not promising, so the government is not in a splashing out mood. So most of what we want to do we'll find more difficult.
This is a major task, and we are embracing that task. It's the most important thing that the Foreign Office has had to do in my career since the end of the Cold War.
You said, we'll find our jobs more difficult. Could you expand on that?
The UK has now been part of the EU for 45 years. In that time, we've grown used to doing more and more things with our European neighbours. That's going to stop on the 29th of March next year. We will no longer be in the room when EU member states are deciding big issues. So we're going to be doing this work by ourselves. I mean, we will be working harder.
Should we just quickly go through France until they come online? So, I mean, this is obviously, it's a really important time. It's quite a difficult time, frankly, in terms of the relationship. But it's really good that we found the time for the Foreign Secretary to go.
Tonight, the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, one of the leading campaigners for Brexit, will be starting a flying trip to Lisbon and Paris to try to strengthen ties. Caroline Wilson, the Director Europe, will be accompanying him and gathers her troops to plan the campaign.
Brexit is the all-important backdrop, and even if they don't want to talk about it, we want to talk about it. So, Matthew, excellent. We were just really wondering about the dinner, the dynamics, and how we obviously get the most out of what is an important bilateral event.
The ambassador's listening to the reception and the residents here. The Foreign Secretary will say a few words, which we'll do entirely in French.
Will he?
Yeah.
Who's going through that with him? Is that your job?
Well, the ambassador,
Okay.
I'm sure that
Has he already? No, I mean, absolutely serious. This is quite important because, you know, we've got to get this right, else it might become infamous for the wrong reasons. So, have we got a text of what he needs to say?
Yeah.
But yes, already in French, and we'll talking through those, the ambassador talking through them in the car away from the airport.
My role is to lead our Europe network of posts and our team here, and obviously I'm travelling with the Foreign Secretary the coming 36 hours, I think it is, so we're packing a lot into 36 hours. I'm the main policy person going from London to be on hand to advise him. He obviously attracts a lot of very senior people, so it's a really good opportunity to talk to them and to influence, which is so important in the context of our exit from the European Union.
We got the good one. We got the nice one rather than the extraordinary rendition. Is that the posh person?
RAF Northolt, 9 p.m. And before Paris, their first stop will be the Portuguese capital, Lisbon. The Foreign Secretary famously says that leaving the EU will make the UK more prosperous. That, of course, will need good relationships with former EU partners, and his officials have prepared a few historical tidbits for him to use.
What was the year of the Treaty of Windsor?
1386.
Fantastic.
Is that right?
It is. Is it the oldest?
It is the oldest diplomatic alliance that we have. And you need old diplomatic alliances at times like this, so that is a good thing. Yeah, it's withstood the test of time and it's been modernised, as you know.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should modernise it again. Yes, yeah. So this is a really good opportunity to cover the waterfront on bilateral issues, foreign policy, as well as your favourite subjects, Brexit.
And where the Portuguese have been, or have been, quite supportive.
In general terms, they've been supportive. That doesn't always translate to the position in Brussels. Frankly, they're worried about us leaving. They're very Atlanticist. So I think we need to emphasise our determination to work together in NATO, but also our determination to continue working with the EU on key foreign policy challenges.
Yeah. I guess they're pretty much like-minded on most of the big other foreign policy questions of the...
They're definitely like-minded, but they're just not always that vocal. As you know, people can be like-minded, but then to translate it to support is something else. And they might have to start being a bit more vocal when we're not in the council.
The message is, we're not leaving Europe.
Yeah.
Our commitment to Portugal remains undimmed.
Indeed. Well, not just undimmed. I think we have to say we want to enhance it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we need to be doing.
That's right.
Actually, this is
brighter,
an opportunity.
brighter. They're not just undimmed, but brighter.
Midnight, and Her Majesty's Ambassador to Portugal, Kirsty Hayes, is here to greet the Foreign Secretary and his party. The ambassadorial jag, with flag, and police escort whisk them to the ambassador's residence, tonight's accommodation.
Ships would sail out.
That's right. This is where all the navigators went off to.
Discoveries.
Did Columbus go from here as well? Where did he go?
I don't know about Columbus.
Breakfast and a last-minute briefing from the embassy team on potential talking points.
Why does it say James Bond was born in Estoril?
So, Ian Fleming was based here during the Second World War when he was a naval intelligence officer. He was based here for a period, and he lived in Estoril. And in Estoril there is a hotel called the Palacio, is that right? Mm-hmm. And just across the road from the Palacio Hotel is a casino. Uh-huh. And it is there that he got the idea for James Bond and for Casino Royale.
Oh, really?
And it is said that he heard the martini shaken not stirred line at the bar in the Palacio Hotel in Estoril.
Really? Fantastic. Been here?
Yep.
Yes.
In the shadow of a museum designed by a contemporary British architect, before meeting up with the economy minister, the Foreign Secretary has to do a quick bit of filming for his official Twitter feed.
Okay, yeah. Hi folks, Boris Johnson, Foreign Secretary. I'm here in Lisbon, in Portugal, to celebrate what is the oldest alliance and friendship in diplomatic history, going back to 1386, going forward through the Napoleonic Wars, through to the Second World War, when of course this was a place that was, I'm trying to think what happened in the Second World War. What did we do in the Second World War? It was neutral, wasn't it? The Azores. What did we do in the Azores? Hi folks, I'm Boris Johnson, I'm the Foreign Secretary. I'm here in Lisbon. Portugal is our fourth biggest trading partner.
We are Portugal's fourth largest. Portugal is not our fourth largest.
Okie dokie. Hi folks, Boris Johnson, I'm here in Lisbon. James Bond himself was said to have been born in Estoril. And today...
James Bond. See, he wasn't born.
Well, you can't put one thing in my brain.
No, I know.
And then correct
the idea for James Bond was born. The idea for James Bond was born.
It's a great friendship. It's a great partnership. It's built on shared values, and we're going to take it forward. All right? Good.
Thank you. There you go. Mic off. Right.
Hey, how are you? Hi. What a beautiful place.
The Minister knows the UK very well.
I did my PhD there in Nottingham and in London.
In what? In what subject?
Economics. I'm the economic minister. I studied economics.
Very good.
Next stop, the Portuguese Foreign Ministry, for lunch with his opposite number, the Foreign Minister.
God, it's quite something. You've got more gold or gusto than we have in the Foreign Office. Thank you very much, everyone. Obrigado. It's wonderful to be here in Lisbon, and I'm really here to build on the 1386 Treaty of Windsor that ushered in the longest ever diplomatic political friendship between any two countries in history. So I'm sure that somewhere in the Treaty of Windsor, somewhere I'm sure there is a clause that says if there should arise some very difficult European negotiation, it is the duty of one party to come to the aid of the other and get the thing moving. I'm sure that is what it says at some stage.
And finally, a quick stop at the British Embassy to meet the staff, in theory for a bit of mutual encouragement.
Bon dia, Carlos. Thank you for everything you do, and you do an amazing job.
A personal question, actually. A lot of my family and friends still to this day are quite divided about the referendum and how people voted. And I just wondered, what was the case with your family and your friends?
Terrible. It's been... I've never known such a huge apple of discord be thrown into British life. I mean, it's just been, but we've got to get on with it. We've got to get through it. We've got to put it to one side. We've got to remember we're still European. There was always going to be a slightly scratchy period whilst we try to work out how to do this. It will be fine once it's done. To be honest, it hasn't helped this sense of division that it's taken so long to get going. That's bad. We need to move on. That's not going to be bloody well reported. This is off the record, isn't it?
Caroline and the team must now turn their attention to the next leg of the trip, which will be Paris.
Ministers are elected, ministers decide, civil servants are appointed through open and fair competition, and civil servants advise.
How do you assess what you need to do in relation to your own personal views?
I'm a public servant. and a civil servant. And the key characteristic of a civil servant is that she or he works for the government of the day within the law. And if you can't do that, you can't be a British civil servant. So I have no problem. I don't feel in the least compromised, even though it's not always what personally I would do. I mean, my personal feelings are beside the point. I am doing the work of the government within the law to the best of my ability.
In the post-Brexit world, the Commonwealth nations will be all the more important to Britain. Sir Simon is getting updated on the state of trade.
Paul, tell us about Nigeria.
Yes, Nigeria produces 10% of Shell's global oil production. Nigeria is Guinness's biggest market. Lagos and Abuja are the most lucrative routes for BA, largely because a lot of Nigerians like to travel first class. The UK as a trading partner of Nigeria has slipped in the last 10 years from number 1 to number 5 and is possibly going further down that list, so we've lost ground and we need to work hard to catch up.
Who are the 5 who've topped us?
India, China, the US, France, Germany.
Why?
Because we've been too reliant on the oil and gas sectors. They have moved in on some of the manufacturing and the agribusiness in particular. China has moved in massively when it comes to infrastructure development. We can't compete with them. So what can we do? I think we should have a much sharper focus on Nigeria as a market and use Nigeria, if you like, as a test case for global Britain.
And you think they would respond quickly to a
yes.
trade overture?
Yes.
Lagos is the commercial capital of Nigeria, the place to try to make those trade deals work. And preparations are afoot for a very special party that could help oil the wheels. The Queen's birthday party. As High Commissioner, Paul Arkwright is based in the political capital, Abuja, but is in Lagos for tonight's event and has time to fit in an appearance on a TV show to do a bit of marketing for the UK.
You know, why aren't Nigerian avocados on the shelves of Sainsbury's in London? You know, why aren't the excellent mangoes that are produced here for sale?
Apart from a value-added export.
Exactly.
Let's talk Brexit now. There have been calls for the UK to strengthen ties with the Commonwealth. Does it become even more significant now with Brexit?
I think with Brexit it becomes more significant.
Do you think Nigeria, it might be difficult for you now because the EU is also going to do that with African countries, Nigeria also, and I don't know, it might become some sort of a competition. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're not going to deal with any trade negotiations or sign up to any deals until we have left.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not denying we will be in competition with the European Union, but we're in competition with members of the European Union as it is. And Britain's economy is very strong. It's growing, it's thriving, and there's a lot that the UK has to offer.
Given its commercial importance, the UK has a large staff in Lagos, headed by the Deputy High Commissioner, Law Bofis.
So this is the residence. The space is great for entertaining. This is where we have meals, obviously. Recently we had the Foreign Secretary and Secretary of State for DFID that came here, so we had dinner here, but we have breakfast meetings, we have lunches and dinners. Over there we have more of a kind of living room space where we sometimes have more informal gatherings.
Tell me about the chairs.
So the chairs, these two are new and they get a lot of really positive feedback because obviously they've got the Union Jack on them. But to make the place a bit more Nigerian, we had some cushions done with lots of local fabric to make it brighter. So it's a combination of Britain and Nigeria.
So if you want to sit somewhere in the middle, okay.
Nigeria is a massively important economy. So as it stands, it's the biggest economy in the whole of Africa. The city of Lagos in itself is a massive economy. It's a bigger economy than the whole of Kenya. So that gives you an order of magnitude. And of course, it's likely to become even bigger as the population grows. So Faye is the task team leader of a World Bank program on improving business environment in Nigeria. It's a program that the UK funds through our Prosperity Fund. This morning is really about hearing from British businesses about what are the main challenges that you face and what do you think it would be useful for such a program to focus on to ensure that it is easier for you all to do business here in Nigeria and to invest in Nigeria.
Well, the biggest problem I see with our industry, which is manufacturing, and we're in the automotive sector principally, is the lack of funding for the products that are made. I've worked in many countries, and this is the only country where we haven't been able to set up a leasing division.
Lack of transparency, the high-handedness, what I would call, often even the abuse of power by anybody who has authority over any business. It can be very, very challenging, and the cost of that compliance is extremely high.
I think there's the whole, what you would call almost lawlessness of the regulatory environment, just to put it very clearly. Mental thing that...
We know that Lagos is also a capital of organized crime, and we know that there are lots of issues related to corruption, for example. So it's not all fantastic, everything's hunky-dory. There are significant challenges, and that's also why we're here.
I have a treasurer working for me. She's a qualified treasurer. Before that, she was a vet. Her husband is an investment banker. They have 3 lovely children, and they can't get a mortgage. They can't get a mortgage. So actually what I'm interested in is the flight of people, intellectual capital, out of Nigeria. We saw in the newspaper yesterday, the doctors haven't been paid for 5 months, and those doctors will go overseas. And as we all know, you can't implement any strategy without people.
I'm of French origin, so my parents were born in France, but I've lived in the UK since I was 17, and I'm now a British national. So I am quite a typical story, I think, of modern Britain and immigration to the UK, and I'm really proud to be representing the UK now.
I'm going to be really brutal and direct. Your view on Brexit as a result of that?
Well, I'm a civil servant, so I work for the government, and I will do whatever I can to make Brexit work, and I will make sure that I use my the different opportunities that I have through the jobs that I do to make that happen. And I think there's a real opportunity now in Africa and in Nigeria in particular to seize on the opportunity that Brexit represents.
Very good.
Cheeky question.
The celebration of the Queen's birthday has many purposes, which need to be carefully balanced. Commercial opportunity with appropriate decorum.
We have worked really hard to get sponsorship. We've got Guinness that have provided drinks. We've got Ciroc branded cocktails going to be made over there. There's Virgin Atlantic. I dare say there's a British Airways banner somewhere. This is our biggest event, the QBP, and I'm sure when you've been around...
QBP?
Queen's birthday party. So we've invited 700 people. There's a very clear set of guidelines. This is about a tasteful celebration of Her Majesty's birthday, and that's really important. So you'll see that we've been very careful to set things up in such a way as reflects that. What won't happen, there won't be people with trays of Ferrero Rocher, and hopefully there won't be too much of those kind of classic stereotypes. People will recognise this is it's a function that will be tasteful and a celebration of the Queen's birthday, but it's also work for us. This is a...
But why no Ferrero Rocher?
Why no Ferrero Rocher? I think it might melt.
Hello. How are you?
Okay, yeah, good
Thanks
to
for
see
joining
you.
us.
This is my deputy. I think you know Law.
We've met, exactly.
Yes.
Your Royal
Thank you
Highness.
so much, Your Royal Highness.
It's a pleasure to see you.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Indeed, indeed. I'm so pleased. You're a miss.
They
did you
always
say?
call me Mrs.
Famous fella father.
We know each other. Yeah.
And thank you very much for the sponsorship. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, look
wow.
at that.
Thank you very much.
We'll make sure we pass it on,
We'll
shall
get
we,
that to
Paul?
Buckingham Palace, okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
The High Commissioner and his deputy are conscious that the UK has a long way to go to catch up with even France and Germany in the list of Nigeria's top trading partners. Soft diplomacy like this is an important part of the business of doing business.
So they have developed this e-learning platform,
right?
Very massive for oil and gas upstream training.
And my chairman, of course, he's not in town now, that's why he's not here. I've told him he's going to look at his diary. It's not in now.
Is it fun?
Oh my goodness, it's so fun. And the reason it's so fun is because of the talent that you meet here. Incredibly talented, entrepreneurial, dynamic, ambitious Nigerians that want to do better for themselves, that want to work with us, and they're incredibly entrepreneurial and incredibly hardworking.
You're going to be in that meeting next week.
But I'm here, and I think we should have that conversation.
Yeah.
Script going for us, actually. It's all right.
We need some work on this.
We need some help on it.
French on the
right.
I'm going to make a long. No. It's just too boring.
Too boring. Right.
It's a long. Needs more gags.
Okay.
So anyway,
I'll have to have a look at it.
We'll do it. Voilà, on va discuter de l'Iran.
You've got all of your objectives in French as well. You're really going to do the whole raft of foreign policy issues in French. Okay.
Sometimes the conversation does switch.
C'est de stabiliser les zones libérées en Irak.
Trying to stabilise and liberate.
Le Raqqa.
I didn't understand that.
Le Raqqa, les gens à Raqqa.
Oh, the Raqqa, right.
Ils s'appellent les Raqqa.
It might just be best to stick to the headlines in French and then perhaps.
You think so?
Well, it may get lost in.
I don't think so. They love it. They love it when I talk French.
Yeah.
And the key thing is that we don't think that they are playing ball with us on Europe at the moment.
Indeed.
In fact, we think they're being backmarkers.
They are.
And we don't know why.
Well, we have a fair idea why.
Why do you think they're being so? Why are they the mauvais élèves?
Well, I think they maybe feel that they can contribute to work with us on the global strategic issues while seeking to get advantage on economic issues, possibly in the near future. Although, of course, as we know, we have far more to gain. It's not about stealing. We shouldn't probably use the cake analogy too much, but it's not so much about them stealing a piece of our cake as growing the economic cake, and our economies will benefit far more by working together rather than them trying to nick some business from us.
Why are they trying to shaft us though? They want more money.
Well, I think they feel that in the near term, some companies are going to have to make some decisions on their headquarters, on where they're going to be located. They are being difficult. But the Macron, I think maybe also, he's got a difficult domestic reform agenda. So how he positions himself on Europe is incredibly important. I think it's really what we want them to feel when they come away from this dinner is this is a partner, an indispensable partner. And we've got to continue working together, and they've got to get that.
I agree with that. But on the other hand, with this relationship, you never do to sound too needy.
No.
So I think for us to go to them and to say, we really matter to you, we're very important, and they're going to see us coming a mile off. I just think we've got to be a bit realistic about this. They won't cut us any slack.
No.
We should be prepared to walk away.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
You can be prepared to walk away from something.
The Foreign Secretary and entourage are again met at the airport by Her Majesty's ambassador. Police outriders speed them through the Paris traffic to the ambassador's residence, one of the grandest in the Foreign Office network. Just an hour for a quick wash and brush up, including his French, before his speech in the residence's ballroom.
Bonjour, je vais parler français. Prenez garde, je vais parler français. Et c'est un très grand plaisir d'être parmi vous dans cette magnifique résidence où a eu lieu le mariage des parents de Winston Churchill. Et certains disent même que c'est ici qu'il a été conçu. Et quand on lui posait la question, il répondait qu'il était présent à l'acte, mais pas au courant des événements qui l'avaient précédé.
The Quai d'Orsay, the French Foreign Ministry, rivals Britain's Victorian edifice for imperial grandeur. Despite tensions, the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, is putting on the full deal for his British dinner guests. Diplomacy's wheels are oiled by convivial occasions, and French hospitality is impressive before you even get to the champagne and lobster. Caroline knows her counterparts well, and though French is no longer the official language of diplomacy, she, of course, speaks it fluently. Next morning, the ambassador and his house guests descend to a breakfast with young French entrepreneurs.
I'm very well. I'm slightly hungry. We had a long dinner last night with Jean-Yves Le Drian.
How was last night?
It was outstanding. Outstanding.
In what
You
way?
can go to a lot of diplomatic dinners and they're very interesting and analytically fascinating and discursive, and afterwards you think, what's going to change? However, last night was different because there were lots of joint initiatives, lots of joint actions proposed, so very much action focused, and you realise the incredible depth and the breadth of the relationship that we have on foreign policy, security and defence issues.
That's fantastic to hear. Europe? Did Europe get discussed? I presume it did.
It would be hard to avoid, wouldn't it? It's the key topic of the day. Will you forgive me? I have to go to breakfast.
Of course.
Bonjour tout le monde, mais je vais parler anglais si c'est okay. Okay.
And Amelie is going to be filming, and I will get out of the way. So.
The tyranny of the Twitter feed is relentless.
Hi folks, Boris Johnson here. I'm in Paris, which is of course our closest European... start again.
Tell me about this cup.
The cup is a present from my office and is a picture of Palmerston, who is the chief mouser of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, recruited 2.5 years ago to tackle our vermin problem, which he has done very effectively, but at the same time he's become a bit of a social media phenomenon with over 66,000 Twitter followers.
One curious feature of our network is that in some of the smallest places we have best access and greatest impact. And so I was in Botswana 2 weeks ago, and we have a tiny post there, but the High Commissioner is the next door neighbour of the President, and they barbecue regularly together. So, you can achieve quite a lot of what we need with quite a small resource.
Her Majesty's ambassador to Mongolia has one of the smallest embassies. But as Brexit approaches, even apparent backwaters can be highly significant.
I've been in the Foreign Office 11 years now. I've been in Mongolia for 3 of those.
And certainly as ambassador, I've never done a job which has been more varied. So here I've ridden horse, camel. I've been on a few camel expeditions. Riding a camel is fantastic. Horses are much faster, camels are more comfortable. And I've also ridden a yak. I have been in Oman, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and now here in Mongolia.
You've been once described as the Bridget Jones of the Foreign Office, and then you said that was not quite correct. Can you explain?
Well, I think that was one of the dangers and perils of communication. I'd been asked to write a blog for Civil Service World on what it was like being posted as ambassador to Mongolia. I think the journalist said more Bridget Jones than Lara Croft, I think. I'm not saying I was either, but I think maybe I had fantasies about being a little bit more Lara Croft than Bridget Jones.
The British Embassy in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, has a total of 3 British officials, including the ambassador, along with 11 locally hired staff.
Mongolia is the size of Western Europe, has a population of 3.1 million, which means that it's the least densely populated country in the world. But as you can see from this map, which happens to be a mining map, it is literally sitting on a gold mine. Gold is only one of 80 different minerals that are found in Mongolia in 6,000 identified deposits. So very, very simply, on paper, Mongolia has the ability to be the richest country per capita in the world.
The embassy is involved in many commercial projects, one of which addresses Ulaanbaatar's pollution problem. The capital is surrounded on 3 sides by mountains, and as people have moved here from the countryside, still living in their tented gers, they burn tyres for fuel, making this, in winter, one of the most polluted cities in the world. Catherine is meeting up with the director of Cambridge Masks, a UK company who have started selling in China and now want to break into the Mongolian market.
Well, starting with the distribution, it's been a very successful 3 days since I've been in the country, and we're very close to doing a deal with the Anungo Group. So I think they're a great partner.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for the introductions to those guys.
Not at all. That's really good. That's working.
Their first order with us has actually landed, and they're already starting to sell.
Oh, fantastic!
I think it's gone very smoothly so far.
You are, so
it's all in the eyes.
It's all in the eyes. Yes.
Tonight, Catherine has arranged for the masks to be showcased at the fashion event of the Mongolian year.
We started with why is it that in Mongolia nobody wears pollution masks, despite it being the single most effective step you can take to protect yourself. And we basically had 3 answers. The first was that people really still aren't aware of the health impact of pollution. The second is they don't know where to buy pollution masks. And the third is that they don't think that they look good. So by coming up with this concept of developing Mongolian designed masks, you create designs that Mongolians want to wear because they're Mongolian, they're not just a foreign import. The masks are made in the UK. They include British technology, which is absolutely at the forefront of protection in masks. It's military technology, which they've converted. We can wear British innovation, Mongolian design, and protect ourselves.
Discussing what help the UK and Mongolia can bring to each other is the ambassador's task. And today, she is meeting the top man himself.
Catherine, what are you up to?
So I'm about to meet the president. This is the 3rd meeting we've had. There are a number of things I want to follow up on, in particular how we can support the economic diversification in Mongolia, how we can attract more foreign direct investment, particularly from the UK, into Mongolia. Your Excellency, President Vitulga, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What's he like?
Well, I've always found him very charming. I think that's true of most Mongolians. There's a real connection that you can build quite quickly, which is very, very helpful as an ambassador, because the personal relationship can be as important as the relationship between your countries.
Sandwiched between two great powers, Russia and China, Mongolia is only a generation away from communist rule. The government have asked for advice on marketing their country as a destination for investment that is not just in mining.
So it's been 27 years since we have tried to create a new society and where we transition to democracy as well as market economy, and we are still, trying to figure everything out.
Like baby.
Your Excellency, thank you for that. I think one area that I've been very struck by is the perception of Mongolia. People love Mongolia because of the incredible, beautiful, empty countryside, the nomadic heritage. But if that is the only perception that they have of Mongolia, they might not want to invest large amounts of money into light industry, into agriculture, and into the mining sector. But there is a way around that, and that's one of the things we shared with the Great Campaign, that if you bring all the key sectors together under one brand, so in our case, Great, you can actually ensure that all of the sectors reinforce each other. So we're not branding experts, but one word that kept coming out, for example, for Mongolia was open, because then you can have open countryside, open skies, open homes for the welcoming side, open for business, open to investment. Not as often that I get to be in seat 1A on an aeroplane.
Parts of this nation are so rich in resources that in southern Mongolia, near the Chinese border, UK-based Rio Tinto are investing a colossal $10 billion in the Oyu Tolgoi copper mine. This also gives huge opportunities for suppliers, for example, of truck engines made in Daventry.
Wow, that is enormous. I've never actually seen one with the engine running before, so having watched the engines be refurbished, having watched them be made, it almost feels like watching a sort of someone you'd seen as a baby suddenly starting going to university.
Full growth, isn't it?
Yes.
Working.
Tell me about the personal side of living in a foreign country and what it's like.
Well, I think you have to be very honest about this. Any job which takes you overseas for large periods of time can be very challenging. I've unfortunately missed the weddings of many of my friends, the christenings of their children, seminal moments where I would have liked to have been there. Because I'm better at jobs which are varied, it means that I can actually do more for the Foreign Office.
Back in the UK, after months of uncertainty, Brexit negotiations are apparently moving forward as the Prime Minister gathers her cabinet at Chequers.
Well, in detailed discussions today, the Cabinet has agreed our collective position on the future of our negotiations with the EU.
Theresa May can at least claim progress here today, but while the sun sets on a deal, it may well look different in tomorrow's light.
Tonight at 10, we're at Westminster, where Boris Johnson has resigned as Foreign Secretary and launched a searing attack on Theresa May's approach to Brexit. In his letter of resignation signed this evening, Mr Johnson accuses the Prime Minister of seeking a Brexit that would turn Britain into a colony of the European Union. The Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, has been appointed the new Foreign Secretary to succeed Boris Johnson.
This is a time when the world is looking at us as a country, wondering what type of country we're going to be in a post-Brexit world. And what I want to say to them is that Britain is going to be a dependable ally and will be a strong and confident voice in the world.
Have you ever thought of being a politician?
No.
Why not?
Well, it's... seriously, I wanted a job that was a career, and where if you did it well, you could rise and get better and more interesting work. And it always seemed to me that politics the reward was not guaranteed, however hard you worked. And when the reward comes, it might come very quickly and then go very quickly. So for my personality, it was just not the right choice.
So what we want to really discuss is cyber and the increasing number of cyber attacks.
In the Foreign Secretary's grandest of offices, Sir Simon is now advising the newly appointed Jeremy Hunt.
Let me just ask you one as a new Foreign Secretary. Let me ask you one other question. I mean, how good are we at this stuff in the UK?
The National Cybersecurity Centre was set up now 2 years ago. And in those 2 years, they have detected 1,100 significant attacks. This relationship between officials and ministers is very delicate. It is essentially a confidential one. And both sides need that in order to do their work. In my view, the bargain is for life. That the advice that I give the Foreign Secretary is between me and him, and remains between me and him, even when neither of us is in office.
Are you keeping a diary?
No.
Would it be wrong for you to keep a diary?
My personal choice is it would be wrong.
So if I come and speak to you in 20 years' time, you're not going to reveal all?
Correct.
What a pity.
Once a year, Sir Simon summons back to base every ambassador and high commissioner throughout the Foreign Office network. It's the annual high-level forum to take the world's temperature and for the boss to let the troops know his thinking.
Now, of course, it's been a very busy and varied year. And I want to share with you the contents of a few conversations I have had with European opposite numbers. First, the meeting begins on their part with some surprise that I'm not in sackcloth and ashes and not completely broken and bowed down by the task in hand. And at the end of the meeting, I fear they leave disappointed or even a bit angry because they think that British civil servants should be stopping this. But these colleagues fundamentally mistake the role of the British civil service and diplomatic service. Our job is to implement the policy of the government of the day within the law. So Brexit is the biggest thing that we have ever undertaken in peacetime. And I am a historian, and 2 years on my mind are 1815 and 1919. Now, I know there is almost nothing in common between the Napoleonic Wars, the Great War, and Brexit. I acknowledge this. But what all these things have in common is a major European power troubling other European powers, and those other powers having to do something about it. And back in 1815, the other European powers dealing with France were generous. Metternich and Castlereagh knew that it was foolish to kick the French when the French were down, and we had 99 years of the system working after 1815. 1919, not so much. And Wilson and Clemenceau and Lloyd George did not see the bigger picture. They exploited the strength of their position, and the whole system broke down in 20 years. So I acknowledge this is talking in too vivid colours, but you get the point that this is a negotiation where the other side has as big a role, as big a voice as us. And as the leaders meet this autumn, they need to think about the medium and long term. They need to think about how the deal will affect them. They need to think in statesman-like terms. They need not necessarily to exploit the full strength of their position. And you all can help those leaders and the teams around those leaders have those more constructive, longer-term thoughts. I hope you agree that that's an interesting challenge to have.